this is the most challenging painting I've done to this day, and I've been working months on it. And in this video I'm going to show you how I painted it. But first of all, if you don't know me, my name is Hannah and I aspire to be at least a part-time artist. And on this channel you can follow me figuring things out along the way. But without further ado, I would say let's get right into painting. At this point in time, it has been more than a year that I finally dare to work on a large canvas again, even though I didn't know exactly what I want to paint on it. Since my perfectionism and the self-doubt that comes with it often tend to paralyze me, this was an achievement. After I prepared the canvas with my typical neon pink underpainting, I scribbled several drafts for potential motifs in my sketchbook and developed an idea I really liked. I just finished shooting the reference photo for the painting. The painting I'm planning to do, and taking a photo of yourself, just like filming yourself, is a lot of the times not that easy. At least it will take much longer than if another person would do it for you. And yeah, let me show you the setup. I put my phone on here and it was pretty tricky to find something that had the right height for the perspective I was going for. Then I had my softbox on here and I've been laying down here on my bed and had this little remote and a self-timer to get the photo I wanted to use as a reference. And yeah, I hope that the photo is good enough for me to work off of. Getting the preliminary drawing right is always extra hard on a large canvas because of the scale, but the perspectives here made it extra challenging. I had to erase so much throughout the entire process. With the finished preparations, it was finally time to paint, and I always like to start with the eyes as they are the center of the face and I like to give my subject a soul first. I don't know exactly why this is, it's probably due to the different brands of paints, but when I do the first coat over the pink underpainting, it's still quite transparent after drying, so I always put a flat layer of paint over the areas I want to work on first. I didn't want to paint the stars and the hair until a later point in time because I wasn't sure about the color yet, so I had to wait and see how the rest of the painting and the coloring develops. I always find it particularly challenging to paint the face and above all to get the skin tones mixed the way I want them. That's why I had to paint over many areas several times. When the head was finished, I had actually hoped that the most difficult part was behind me, but I was proven wrong. This is the first time I've painted a portrait of this size in color, and I painted the first and so far last 2 portraits of this scale in black and white a few years ago. So the fact that it's the first time in color was something I noticed, because it's so much harder for me to mix the skin tones I imagined and to paint them in general. Since I don't paint hyper realistically, I thought it would be a quick thing to paint the arms, for example, but let me tell you, I really had to paint over a lot of areas multiple times, and in between I also just painted the top because I needed a break from the skin tones. The hands were also a challenge. I have a love-hate relationship with hands. Hands are really not easy to paint, and yet I find them very fascinating and somehow still like to paint them despite all of the effort. As a nice little detail, I gave her purple nail polish, and from then on I got totally hung up on her neck and chest area. I had to paint over it many times, and it drove me to the brink of insanity at times. The fact that the only place I have for my easel is opposite to my bed, where I could see the canvas all the time, didn't help either, but I couldn't help it, I had to just stare at it, and yeah, it was horrible sometimes. But anyways, it took me a few sessions to get it right, and unfortunately I didn't have the patience to film much of it. At this point, it had been 2 months since I started this painting, and it's fair to say that it's my most challenging one to this date. I have never painted a person this size in color before, as I said, and it really demanded a lot from me. But I only realized all of this after quite a while, and I love that I choose my challenges organically and subconsciously, so that every few paintings it's automatically my quote-unquote most challenging painting yet. And so you don't have to sit down with the intention that this painting has to be better than all the previous ones. It just happens over time. I often use myself as a reference for my paintings because I am the most easily available resource. I usually don't try too hard to make it look like me, but in the end, of course, there is often a strong resemblance, which is why I can't deny that it's me in the painting. Over the years, I have tried explicitly to paint self-portrait here and there, but I always found it really difficult because how you see yourself in the mirror is different from how you see yourself in photos. But I also realized that I would find it uncomfortable in some way to explicitly paint only self-portraits, which is nonsense, of course, because I can do whatever I want with my art. That's why I decided during the painting process, as a little self-empowerment move, that it should be a self-portrait. For this reason, I also added 2 of my most characteristic birthmarks. After finally getting through the never-ending skin tones, which was the hardest part for me so far, it was a nice change to start with the background. However, I also find it very challenging to paint fabrics, which I have never done in this size before. What you often don't see is how often I have to correct things or paint over areas. For example, I painted over the purple tiles about 8 times because the color just wasn't the way I wanted it to be. But I'm also a bit proud that I managed to eyeball the perspective distortion of the chessboard. Up to now, it's always been quite uneven and not quite right in terms of perspective. So I've been thinking about including some typographic element, just like in my last couple of paintings, but I really don't want to ruin the whole thing. So I uploaded a photo of the current state of my painting in Photoshop to just test it out a little bit, but I'm not convinced yet that that's it. I don't know, the placement, something is still off. And maybe I'll wait until I make my decision when the background is finished, because at first I was convinced that I don't want it to have it floating in here. I would rather have it integrated into the painting. Yeah, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced, and I can't just try it out because it's very, very hard to cover darker or very fluorescent paint with white paint again. So yeah, I wanted to test it out first. I also painted a dragonfly in paint for the first time, and I wanted it to be very shimmery. It was also exciting to see how the background developed. Until the end, it wasn't quite clear to me how exactly the colors, etc. would turn out. I just knew from the beginning that I wanted the painting to look very ethereal and dreamy. At this point, I usually regret painting over the pink underpainting. Maybe it's because I've become so used to the look of the background in pink, but here I really always have to trust the process. Okay, after almost 3 weeks, I finally got around to start on the background or to continue the background, and now I don't like it because I think it looks way too messy, but I ran out of my dark blue and especially main paint for the background, so I can't continue, which kind of sucks because it's been over 3 weeks that I haven't painted, and today I finally have the time and it's still early in the afternoon and I can't continue and it's so annoying. It's exactly 1 week later, I got new blue paint and I tried to do the background again, but I'm still not sure if I like it. This time around I concentrated on doing shining effects just around the body, and since I did the highlights and the other tones in the skin with visible brush strokes, I try to be coherent, but I think it's too much. And it's so frustrating because I just don't know how to do it. I again tested a few versions on how I want the sentence to be written on the background, and I also thought about what else could be shown in the background or if it should stay like that. I'm not quite sure yet, but I tested a few things here in my sketchbook, especially with lighting. And then I put it in Photoshop as well to kind of test out the composition. I think I like it, but I'm not quite sure if I want to commit to that. I think I will start by writing the sentence on the canvas, and then I will decide if I want to have something else on the background. Well, cleaning this up is definitely gonna be fun. I painted that is sometimes a strange thought that crosses my mind when I look very intently at my paintings. Of course, I know rationally that I created these paintings, but sometimes I don't think it quite feels like it, as if someone else had actually painted it. If you're not new here, you probably know that I've been working a lot on creative blocks and doubts or negative beliefs around my own skills over the last few years, and this feeling is probably related to that. But a few days ago, when the sun was shining very beautifully into my apartment, hitting my newest and most challenging painting to this date, I actually felt proud, and the realization that it was me who painted it. I sat down in the sun in front of the canvas for a while and just looked at it. I also have this motif available as a postcard in my small online shop for my art and handmade pieces at hannastollenberg.com, but it's also linked everywhere, and I ship both within Germany and also internationally. So if you like dreamy art, this postcard may be for you. If you're still here and watching, thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me. It really helps me and the channel, and it supports me on my way to becoming hopefully at least a part-time artist. I would also be very happy if you like the video or leave a comment. Let's get in touch. And I also do have a small online shop for my art and handmade pieces at hannastollenberg.com. It's also linked everywhere. Yeah, that's it for today's video. I really hope you have a very nice rest of your day, and until next time, goodbye.